arsonists, like, you're not going to touch our building. And here is another arsonist going up to looters and arsonists, like, you're not going to touch our building. And here is another hurdle that businesses have to get over is they have to pay their property taxes according to state law before they can even begin removing this rubble. That's why you see this even months later after the businesses were destroyed. But because of COVID and because they're closed, a lot of these businesses don't have the money to pay their property taxes before they can clear the rubble. Paris?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that is just a heart-punching detail in all of this. Did you hear Carol Becker? Big mom energy. That's what it's going to take. All right, Hillary, thank you. Congressional Republicans took to the House floor yesterday to condemn the unrest in cities like what we just saw that played out in Minneapolis and Portland, Oregon. And they are now calling on the Attorney General to investigate who exactly is organizing and funding some of the riots and violent protests.
Look, we've all seen the out-of-control left hijacking our cities across the nation, and we know where the bottom line ends. Organizations like Antifa, where they are targeting police officers, burning down buildings, destroying private property, besieging federal buildings, attacking innocent civilians.
So my next guest actually led that effort, put this together. Andy Biggs, a Republican congressman from Arizona, joins me now. Congressman, always great to have you here to talk about the big issues with us. You're a member of the House Judiciary Committee as well. And you have a new op-ed out in the Washington Examiner in which you write, allow me to brag on you just a little bit more with detail here. The loss of humanity on our streets is obvious, evil, and dangerous. Now that's something that I would think that people could get together bipartisan. What was the mood in that hearing yesterday and on Capitol Hill when it comes to this issue?
Well, there are some across the aisle who agree with me, and if I would have had time, one actually found out what we were doing and came up to me at the last minute. I couldn't fit him in. He said, "I'm with you. We've got to protect the police, and we've got to stop this rioting." So I think there are people that are tired of it, but then I still face people who are saying this is overblown. The damage is overblown. That this is justified, etc. So there is some mixed reviews still out there, but I think we're winning some hearts over to our side, and that's the goal.
You know, I want people to understand too, in your state of Arizona very early on, which means just a few weeks ago in Phoenix, you saw some pretty tough rioting too. I mean, we showed some of that looting and rioting on television as it was happening. It's really frightening when the daylight comes out and you see how much damage. What can Congress do to help out those business owners like what we just saw in Minneapolis? They're going to have to pay their taxes to clean up all that rubble before they can even get help.
Well, I'm a big believer that the 14th Amendment is the...
It's going to throw that much more of a burden upon to the tax-paying people in those cities that are now going to have to pay for cleanup and recovery towards cleaning up that mess. Because the business owners will probably just throw up their hands and say, you know what? I'll just leave it to the county or leave it to the city or leave it to whoever, and they'll just walk away from it because they'll feel like that it's a lost cause. So inevitably it'll fall back onto the city or the county or whoever towards taking care of that rubble and taking care of that horrible tragedy that fell upon that business during the time that it fell upon them.
Way that Congress has to go to kick into this, because the rights of all citizens under the Constitution are applied to the states as well through the 14th Amendment. That's important. Well, what we can do is we can continue to ask Christopher Wray, the FBI director.
In other words, they're plaguing the problem by even creating more of a problem that is only making it even 100 times worse or 1,000 times worse. Cutting their own noses off to despite their faces by going on this type of rampage. I call it a rampage. That's what they would call it back in the Wild Wild West days, whenever the cowboys and Indians was into it, and either the cowboys would go in and burn out a lot of the teepees and the villages, or vice versa, the Indians would rise up and go burn out a town. They would call it a rampage. And that's exactly what this is a rampage. It's a group of people that get together and decide that they're going to create havoc, hardship, horror up onto that entity of people that's living in that area, or that's trying to conduct business in that area. They're saying now that just the looting alone this year is going to be somewhere around $2 billion. $2 billion. That ain't counting the fires, that ain't counting the floods, that ain't counting the hurricanes, that ain't counting the cobalt, that ain't counting the people that we're already having to pay for, that's already been incarcerated either in local, state, or federal jails. That's just the looting alone, this year alone.
Attorney General William Barr, to make sure that the federal laws and constitutional rights are protected. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to push on that, because there are associations that are out there that fit under the civil RICO statutes, for instance, where they could go in, find out who's organizing this stuff, who's coordinating these things, and they could start seizing assets. Harrison, I'm a big believer that if you make arrests and you prosecute, don't let them out on bail, or without bail. Just make sure you prosecute and actually go forward on these cases. You'll actually slow down some of this unlawfulness that's going on out there.
I tell you, there are a lot of business owners who certainly want to see that happen, and that sounds actionable and actually some things that can be done. Thank you very much for coming on the program and telling us about that hearing. And it always is nice to hear if there could be some bipartisan.
It's not just the business owners, it's the insurance companies that's having to fit the bill on all this stuff. You know, it's one thing if God does it, and it's another thing if man does it. If God does it, the insurance companies that I'm familiar with usually strikes it up towards an act of God or an act of nature. Well, whenever they know that a bunch of hoodlums has come in town that has done this, it's terrorism. It's homegrown terrorism is what it is. And we need to look at it towards what it is, the same way as we look at left extreme Muslim over in the Middle East, towards what they're doing, towards cutting off people's heads of those that they can't conform into their religion. You gotta call it like it is. You can't put a Band-Aid on something like this. You have to call it like it is. And it's just exactly that. It's homegrown terrorism.
Way forward. So good news from you, at least in a bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Controversy now over last night's Academy of Country Music Awards. Why some critics are crying foul over who took home the top prize.
And the winner of the ACM Entertainer of the Year is... No way. No way. We have a tie. This has got to be a first in ACM history.
The Academy of Country Music Awards shocking fans last night after Carrie Underwood and Thomas Rhett tied for the night's top award. Some critics are calling the decision sexist. Fox News headlines 24/7 reporter Carly Shimkus is always on the story. What is going on here?
Harris, a whole lot. So first of all, the award show usually airs in April at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. This year, it took place in September and was spread out across venues in Nashville. No audience allowed, forcing singers to accept their awards to the sound of no applause. And if that isn't strange enough, like you said, the biggest award of the night resulted in that tie.
Thank you to the Lord Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. Thank you so much to my wife.
Thank you, fans, for coming out to see us, spending your hard-earned money. 2020, man.
So there you have it, both Thomas Rhett and Carrie Underwood nabbing the coveted Entertainer of the Year award. And while double the winners usually means double the fun, social media turned sour, with some people claiming sexism was involved. One Twitter user sounding off, writing, "Seriously, when you can't have Entertainer of the Year by yourself, and it needs to be shared with a man? Y'all know nobody compares to Carrie Underwood right now." Another fan responding, "Exactly. They should be ashamed. They know Carrie Underwood is so gracious. I would have told them to take their award and shove it." Now, Underwood has won a total of 15 ACM awards and was named Entertainer of the Year in 2009 and 2010. The last time a woman won was actually Taylor Swift in 2012. Still, Underwood doesn't seem to mind, Harris. She said that she was happy to share the honor.
I loved what she said, though, right? Doesn't it just kind of sum up everything? 2020.
Yeah.
That's what I say about everything now. It's 2020.
Absolutely. Let's
Carly
talk about 2020.
Great to see you. Thank you very much. The Daily Briefing now.
A live look in Washington, where President Trump will speak this hour. Plus, veteran journalist Bob Woodward is here to talk about his new book based off his interviews with the president. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, and this is the Daily Briefing. President Trump heading to Wisconsin later today, but before that, we'll see if he has anything more to say after a stunning news conference yesterday. The president said the CDC director was confused about the timing of a potential vaccine. He also railed against mail-in ballots, calling them a greater threat to the 2020 election than foreign interference. There's a lot to cover, so let's begin with Chief White House correspondent John Roberts. He's live on the North Lawn. What's happening at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, John?
Well, they're grinding up some trees across the street, so it's a little noisy. On that last point, mail-in ballots, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court just ruled that mail-in ballots can be accepted up to 3 days after Election Day. So it's possible, Dana, we may not know who won Pennsylvania until November 6th at the earliest. Now, you were showing some pictures there of the National Archives Museum. President Trump will be there in this hour to give a speech in which I'm told he is going to go off very strongly against protesters who are ripping down statues over the summer, and for Democrats not standing up against them, including Joe Biden. He is also going to announce that he'll include a statue of Delaware founding father Caesar Rodney in the president's proposed Garden of Heroes that he talked about out there in South Dakota back on the 3rd of July. Rodney's one of the lesser-known founding fathers, but was integral in American independence, making an 18-hour midnight ride from Delaware to Philadelphia to cast a tie-breaking vote in the Second Continental Congress to declare independence. Because Rodney was a slave owner, officials in Wilmington back in June took down a statue of him in Rodney Square, fearing that it might be torn down. There you see them removing the statue. So the president's either going to take that statue or erect a new one in his Garden of Heroes. Location of that still to be determined. The White House also pushing back again today against the statement from CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield in Congress yesterday that a COVID vaccine may not be available to the general public until next summer at the earliest. The president telling me yesterday in a briefing that Redfield just flat out got it wrong. Listen here.
When we go, we go. We're not looking to say, gee, in 6 months we're going to start giving it to the general public. No, we want to go immediately. No, it was an incorrect statement. I saw the statement. I called him. I said, what did you mean by that? And I think he just made a mistake. He just made a mistake.
100 million doses of the vaccine are expected to be ready for delivery or disbursement by the end of the year, maybe even before that, and another 700 million by the end of March. So that should cover pretty much anybody, Dana, who wants to get one. That's months ahead of what Redfield was predicting. But watch for a reaction from the White House soon on this Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling, because that is a big one. Dana?
I know. Don't plan any vacation days. That's what I'd say. Okay, thank you, John. The Biden campaign is putting a big focus on Pennsylvania today. As we mentioned, both Joe Biden and his running mate are holding events there today. Now, that's a state where President Trump pulled off an upset in 2016, and he aims to try to keep it in his column. Jackie Heinrich is live in Philadelphia for us. Hey, Jackie.
Hey, Dana. Well, President Trump won this state by about 44,000 votes less.
And in terms of buy value now, I'm very cautious on.
You had written cables, as ambassadors do, to your capital to explain, your analysis of the Trump administration. And this was after meetings between Prime Minister May at the time and Donald Trump. You say, we really don't think this administration is going to become substantially more normal, less dysfunctional, less unpredictable, less faction-driven, less diplomatically clumsy and inept. For a man who has risen to the highest office on the planet, President Trump radiates insecurity. So you wrote that then, and you resigned over it. Has anything in your analysis changed?
I wrote it actually for a high-level ministerial meeting in London in the middle of 2017, so it's 6 months into that new administration. And the job was, the task was to write concisely but clearly and frankly, in a highly confidential medium, about how the new US administration was working out. And a lot of people have said since, it was a bit understated, wasn't it? Because haven't things been even more disruptive than that? Others obviously disagree with it. You're paid to make a call, not to sit on the fence, to make a call and to give ministers your best advice, your best guidance on how things would work out. As you know, obviously, when I was writing the book and preparing for its launch, I read it all back, and honestly, I don't think it was a bad call.
Mitigation factors are the best response right now. The social distancing, washing hands, and masks, which of course the president has been at times acknowledging masks, but spending probably arguably more time discrediting masks or somehow diminishing them and their effectiveness. Katie?
Yeah, and just consider, how do you figure out who is in most need of a vaccine? Is it going to come from a doctor? There are all sorts of logistical questions about who's going to get it and when there's going to be enough out there. So,
the pro athletes,
proceed with caution.
They seem to get the testing.
Yeah. There you go. Kelly O'Donnell. Cynical, but true. Peter Baker, thank you as well. And joining me now, two Democratic governors from the Midwest, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Governors, thank you very much for joining us. I want to start with the president holding rallies, not adhering to social distancing, very few people wearing masks, except for those who are seated right behind him where the cameras would be showing. Governor Whitmer, the president, he's flouting the rules. And we heard from one resident of Wisconsin a moment ago who said that they were worried that they were going to go to the market before he got there, stock up for weeks in case there is a rise in cases. What do you do when the president comes into your state, as he did in yours the other week, and flouts these rules?
Well, I think that's the position a lot of us are in. He's going to be going into quote unquote swing states and having these rallies, and it's so disturbing because we know we've made an incredible sacrifice. We took this virus on, we got serious about it, we've ramped up testing, we've saved thousands of lives, we've re-engaged our economy. Some of our kids are back in schools, we're on the cusp of flu season, and yet you see this behavior from the leader of the free world who's going in and denying that this virus is still a very real threat, that it is still deadly. He knew this for months on end and has deceived the public. And we're going to see, I think, more people as a consequence get sick. And we're doing our best to keep our numbers down and ramp our testing up and keep our positivity rates low. Michigan is a leader. We've made great strides, but this undermines all of that and jeopardizes our economy, and it jeopardizes the health of our people.
Your positivity rate right now, I believe, is at 5.3%. Governor Walz, the president is going to be in Minnesota tomorrow. You've written an open letter to both the Biden and Trump campaign. I'm going to read it. You say to comply with the relevant guidelines, your events generally must not exceed 25% capacity, not to exceed 250 people. Attendees must maintain social distancing of at least 6 feet at all times, including when entering and exiting the event. Face coverings are required indoors and strongly encouraged outdoors. So if past is precedent here, the president is not going to abide by those guidelines, and neither will his supporters. What do you do about it?
Yeah, well, thanks, Katie. And I would associate myself with everything Governor Whitmer said. Our states, as the president, refused to take responsibility. Governors were asked, and we gladly do it. We do take responsibility. We're making progress. We're saving lives. We know that what Dr. Redfield said yesterday is absolutely true, and face coverings and social distancing are the thing to do. If you want to come to Minnesota and earn votes, show us you care about us. Show us you care about our health. So I sent it to both campaigns. Being the school teacher I am, we all know sometimes you tell the whole class something when we all know the kid who needs to hear it. And I'm just hoping that this reckless behavior of putting people at risk and jeopardizing all the gains we made to get our kids back in school, keep our businesses open. But let's be very honest, if the President of the United States lands and packs 10,000 people into a warehouse, he's probably going to do that. What I'm trying to do is mitigate that risk. We'll be there to help make sure people stay safe. We'll try and get masks handed out. We'll try and do all we can, but this is what governors have been up against from the beginning, and your previous guests were exactly right. We still don't have the testing we need. We are still dealing with PPE shortages, and the one thing I would say a bright spot is we work with the CDC of one of 4 states on this issue of what happens when a vaccine comes. Your guests were exactly right. It is complex. Ultra cold storage means you have to keep these vaccines at 94 degrees below zero. You can't store them in a refrigerator overnight. This is going to be complex, so it's not going to happen overnight. Dr. Redfield is right, and if the president does this, it makes it harder.
I want to comment on what he just said, and then I'm going to let my viewers go. He was talking about a good teacher in a classroom. Sometimes you say what you're going to say to the whole classroom, even though you intended to only to say it to one person. That concept can also be turned around to the point that you make out saying what you're saying to one particular person in the classroom, but in reality, you're wanting everybody to hear it. So that same teaching method can be used either way. Either you're speaking up because you want one particular person to hear it, or you're picking one particular person out because you know the rest of the classroom needs to hear it. So it can work either or. It's a double-edged sword there. But the fact of the matter is, we should have strong leadership in being able to tell us the truth. And whenever you have this much controversy, this much division on opinions about the vaccine, and when it's going to be created, and when it's going to be safe, and when you're supposed to wear a mask, and when you're supposed to refrain from having more than 250 people in house under the same roof. Whenever you're dealing with this much confusion, according to the Bible that I read, Satan is the author of this type of confusion. You have too many oxymorons going on at the same time, sending out too many different messages to too many different people, that now it becomes basically a clogged up message that can't everybody or hardly anybody put a whole lot of credibility in towards what's believable versus what isn't believable. And it's a very, very toxic atmosphere that the president is creating by doing this. It's extremely toxic. It's I could go from A to Z in different areas that it's toxic in. Because if we was to ever embark upon something really, really serious. Let's say the president of the United States was the president during the time that Pearl Harbor got attacked. And the president needed to address the nation. After poor leadership in other severe areas, towards us losing almost 200,000 people of the coronavirus, is people really going to take or pay a lot of attention to what he's going to say, even though they have witnessed another Pearl Harbor or another 9/11 attack? Some of them won't, because they'll be so mentally deranged and confused and not knowing who to believe and what to believe, they just won't believe nothing. They'll choose that path. You not only believe nothing, you don't trust nothing. You don't trust nobody, you don't believe nobody, and you just let it sail. And anytime you have a society that is choosing that extreme alternative, you have a very, very toxic environment that is now building in the land, to the point that now don't nobody know who to believe, don't nobody know who to trust, don't nobody know nothing. That's what it creates. And it's extremely dangerous in case of a dire emergency. Let's say the president had to call on the citizens of this land to take up arms because he knew that war was inevitable. Would he be able to conjure up enough people to jump on airplanes, to put boots on the ground, to make sure that event didn't happen? Would he be able to do that of somebody that's wish-washy, back and forth, in and out, up and down? Today we are, tomorrow we're not. It's going to be here, no, it ain't going to be here. Oh, it's safe, no, it ain't safe. I mean, come on. You're dealing with people's lives here. If you didn't know what you didn't know during the time that you didn't know it, you should have just come out and said, I don't know, rather than lie about it. Going back to the cliche that honesty is the best policy. When you go to lying to the public, they'll catch on pretty quick that what this individual's doing, he's playing us. He's preying on our emotions. He's preying on our feelings. He's preying on our consciousness. We're being played here. And once the general public realizes that they're being played, kind of like Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, or kind of like Jimmy Swaggart, I'm going to use those two events. That was two major events pertaining to a bad PR status. Whenever it reaches that level, then you have a total collapse of whatever message that the messenger was trying to bring forth to his group, to his venue, to his viewers. You have a total collapse of that. And that is so, so, so sad. Plus, it's so dangerous whenever you reach that level of uncertainty. Good luck to all of us coming from the Windmill Ministries. We thank you for listening, and good luck. Shalom.